For that, is there any POI? 3, 2, yes.
Has
Yes.
never been so rich until the point that it changed to be more radical because it is more open to technology and businesses coming from outside, because before they are too Zionist in order to be rich.
Okay. Sorry. I'm not really sure what you're trying to say, because radical political move can be anything. It doesn't have to be about technology. And as I gave you my example, for example, like what Netanyahu did. Okay, suddenly there was tax cut, and corporates didn't have to pay any tax. And of course, he received a lot of disagreement coming from people. And secondly, we believe that politics should be transactional by compromising, because understand that just because you have good intention doesn't mean the other side of the political spectrum doesn't have good intention, right? There might be certain benefits that could be adapted or could be incorporated into your own implementation. For example, Joe Biden is left-wing, but he still considers the corporate benefits. He doesn't just, okay, because I'm leftist, the taxation toward the corporate should be very big. That's not what happens. Okay, he still considers how to incorporate all parties, how to listen to all the aspirations coming from, let's say, the left people and the right people. And it's going to create more stable political system, and it's going to let him to have more supports. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for that fine speech. To open the case in opposition side, I would like to welcome Leader of All. Here. Wait a minute. Yeah, I think Yorkom was asking for everyone consent to be recorded. Is everyone consent? Like from OG, are you consent?
I think OG is okay.
Okay. Oh. Oh. Okay. CG. Okay. CO.
Okay.
Okay. So the Orcom, we can start to record. All right. I would like to welcome Leader of Opposition. You're here.
Check, am I audible?
Your voice is quite small in my device. Can you be louder, please?
Am I audible now?
Yep, it's clear.
Okay. Before I start my speech, may I have 1 minute toilet break? Sorry.
Okay, sure. For everyone that also want to go to the toilet, you can go now, because we are not going to have like more people going to the toilet in the middle of the debate. So use this time for you to go to the toilet.
Okay. Let me recheck. Am I audible?
Yep, you're clear.
Okay. So my pronouns are he, him. You can POI me by unmuting yourself. Wait. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. A few points of setup coming from us all. So we think that a radical political system actually brings more harm, more good than harm. So let's characterize a country in which radical movements emerge, right? We think that there is something wrong with. We think that there is something wrong with the country where the government have done something wrong, or the people think that the ideology or the political system is so messed up that they need to reform that thing by having a radical movement. So that is why we think that radical movements radical movement is actually urgency in those types of country. So what is radical movement itself? Radical movement is a movement that transforms a country, for example, like the political system, the structural change, and etc. etc. So I think that a proposition failed to characterize what radical movement is, since they said like radical movement just comes overnight, and people are not ready and they just change overnight. We think that it's untrue, right? It takes a long time to make a movement itself. It takes a long time to think of what you want to change and what you want to reform a country to be like, right? So we think that it doesn't just happen overnight, where a group of people think like, I think the ideology is wrong and I want to change it, and it just happens. We don't think that it's true. So they also characterize like how the people in the radical political movements are people from the political system itself. It might be true, but most of the time it's from like normal citizens or people who think that they have not been listened to by the government, so they want to change the system. So we think that there are two scenarios that will happen, right? If the radical movement works, it means that a lot of people agree with the radical movement itself, means that they will get a lot of support, and it means that government has done something wrong, since most of the citizens agree with the radical movement. So we think that it does a lot. It doesn't give any harm, since most of the people agree. But second of all, if it doesn't work, it means that no one supports the movement itself, meaning that the movement itself is wrong. So so the radical movement doesn't win against the current politic, and it doesn't give any harm at all. So moving on to my rebuttals. First point of rebuttal about how they said that, other political side actually have the right intention. Yeah, we think that it's, even if it's true, but if radical, like I've characterized before, if radical movement exists, it means that they have done something wrong, and that something is very, very big, that is bigger than what they've done, right? So we think that their characterization is purely wrong. Now, moving on to my argument. First, about the radical movement's agenda. Of course, the radical movement's agenda is to fight for people's rights and to stop oppression and give these people more freedom. So by having that agenda, we think that they actually give a lot of benefit, which is, first, they will try to address the deep issue, right? If they win against the political the current political system, we think that they'll actually try to address the deep issue that has not been done by the current government, since it's part of their agenda, right? If the current government doesn't listen to their people, then the newer government, which is the radical political system, can try to help and improve the quality of the people's life by trying to reform it. Second of all, the benefit is that these radical political system will actually be inclusive. Since it comes from the people itself, it means that it comes from like a lot of groups that come together to like fight against the current government, which is maybe corrupted or have done something wrong. It means that they'll try to listen a lot more to their people, and that is very beneficial, since the government responsibility is to serve the people, or to listen to people, or to cater to all types of people. So third benefit is about how then these radical political system will actually raise a lot more political awareness. As we all know, there are a lot of people in the gray area, which is like which don't know anything about the political system at all, and they do not know what their political rights are, right? So they just like accept the oppression that comes from the government because they don't know anything about political system. But if a radical if radical political system like emerge, then they know that, oh, so the all this time I've been oppressed by the government. That is why there is an organization which tries to to protect me or try to fight for my rights and other people's rights, so they know their own political rights. So why is it likely for the radical movements to do all those things I've listed before? First, it's part of their agenda. Like I've characterized before, radical movements come from the people itself, so they will try to listen to themselves, which is the people. Second of all, they have planned things out. Like I've said before, it doesn't comes overnight, and it takes a long time to make the new ideology or the new political system. So they have planned all those stuff before, and that is why we think that it's more likely for the radical political system to work. So why is this very, very important, right? I'll link this back to government's responsibility, which is like I've said before, to cater to people or to listen to people. So radical political system on our side actually does government's job, which is to listen to people and to serve people. Comparatively, on government on proposition side, where current government have done something wrong and they do not listen to their people or something like that. So we think that government in proposition side have not actually done their job. So what is the impact, right? I think that first it will actually lead to better. It will lead the country to be a lot better in the long run. So even if proposition tried to say how it comes from radical political system comes from the people who doesn't know anything about the politics and just want their rights to be heard. Yes, we think that yes, it's true. But that doesn't mean that they do not that doesn't mean that they do not they will not know anything about politics at all. If they try to pursue to be the new government, it means that they have prior political knowledge before, and at least they have the bare minimum to run the country. So we think that that is why we should win this case. Proud to oppose. Sorry.
Thank you, Liberal Opposition, for the fine speech. I'd like to call upon Deputy Prime Minister Kyosha.
Okay, am I audible?
Can you come again?
Am I audible?
Yep, that's clear.
Wait, I open online stopwatch first. Yeah. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I just want to start this debate by making some clarification. Firstly, I just want to ask OO why the reformation under their world must be radical. Because under your world, the new government will shift the Overton window. This means that you will change the fundamentals from certain country, which means when it was previously moderate or centrist, or maybe it was previously center-right, now you change it into far-right. This is what happened in Israel, for instance. But here's what you need to note, Judge. This new radical government is not shaped to reform or to correct the past wrongs. This new government is created because there is a push from the majority, or the majority try to find its way to push this particular new radical government by making certain propaganda and whatnot. We agree that this has happened for a long time, but this does not signify a reformation. This signifies a victory to the majority. That is why far-right government is shaped in Israel, for instance. But this is not a good ideal world that we want to defend under government side, because we say the harm is that it will in fact be exclusionary to the minorities in itself. It is exclusionary to the centrists, because most of the policies that is going to be made is actually just pandering to the majority, which is, for instance, in Israel, they just focus on conservative economic policies like deregulation, like tax cut, but it disregards certain leftist value. It disregards the leftism, like the idea of redistribution and taxation, which is invalidated under your side of the house. This means that it is invalidating a certain group of people. This means that it is just, it's just going to protect the interest of certain group of people. Note that this debate is not about whether the government is going to be corrupted or not. The tendency for corruption is symmetrical. And this is also not about whether government is going to reform or not, because under our side, when the government is built on the basis of moderation, reformation can still be done, if not better. Because under your world, the reformation probably is just going to focus on a certain spectrum of political leaning, but under our side, moderation means that it is going to be more transactional, means that this transactional means that we will cater not only to the right-wing ideals, but the tendency for the government to also try to represent the left-wing value is going to be there. This looks like Joe Biden. This looks like Joe Biden trying to, although he is a leftist, but still trying to co-opt certain value of pro-corporate ideals. But we think that this is going to be non-existent under your side of the house, because eventually you take away this transactionalism within the politics, which hamper the policy making. I think this is the weighing, because I think it's important to ensure the sustainability of that particular country to actually have a government that wants to listen. I think under your side, exactly, the government will not listen, because the government will be emboldened with confirmation bias even further, because they will think that, okay, they have been rewarded with the victory with the new government, they feel legitimized. Exactly, that is why they will not listen to the gray area, they will not listen to the moderates, they will just listen to their constituents. For instance, the far right will just listen to the right-wing conservatives. But under our side, it is going to be more transactional, right? And it is something that you will lose under your world, because the ideal policy making should not be too idealist. It should not be just pandering to one ideal only, because we're afraid that a lot of people will feel excluded, or we're afraid that a lot of policies will actually just be inflexible. Because when we talk about, let's talk about policy first, because I think that given that there is a lot of externalities in the market right now, the market is volatile and so on, I think this is exactly why the policy cannot only be revolving around deregulation. It cannot be revolving around pro-corporate ideals. We're afraid that with this new radical government, I'm afraid that it is going to be so hard for them to be able to cater a certain left-wing ideals, a certain redistribution. That's why eventually, in this current market, it's going to, a lot of minorities will be excluded even further, right? Or even in the Barcelona, for example, when there is a rise of the left wing in itself, I think it is also harmful, because when you are glorifying only leftist idea, for example, you just focus on redistribution, taxation, a lot of draconian taxation and whatnot. I think it is also going to be unstable for the economic market and the infrastructure development in itself. But the thing is, I think that policy should be flexible, and it should be made based on the condition that you live in right now. It should be tailored based on externalities, but this is something that you will not get under your side. So you impact the survival of a lot of people, because I think that a lot of working class under your world will suffer even further because of the inflexible policy making under your side. But let's talk about the society, because I think that my first speaker has explained that there are a lot of people who are not going to be ready for this. Note that probably the right-wing conservative will be ready for the far-right new government. But when we talk about the center-right or center-left, maybe they are not ready. These are the constituents that we want to protect under our side. They are the minorities. I think under your side, if exactly, they will feel excluded from the system. So either they will opt out from the system, they will remain silent, which embolden the new government to exist in the long term, which is harmful, which means that they are going to be able to monopolize the policy making, or this particular, let's say, right wing or left wing, which is not catered within that particular new government, will eventually easily be swayed to other form of radicalism within the society, which means that it is going to be harmful, because eventually you're going to make the discourse is going to be harmful, because eventually like they're going to be easily be more radicalized under your side of the house, in a sense, not in a sense that they're going to be swayed by the radical groups in the grassroots in itself. I think this is undermining our democracy system. I think this is not representative at all. Their perspective should actually be catered, but I'm afraid that their perspective will not be catered anymore. So if you protect moderation and whatnot, it's going to be worse under your word. Propose.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister, for that fine speech. I'd like to call upon Deputy Leader of Opposition, here.
Check, am I audible?
Yep, you're clear.
Okay, please give me a couple of seconds to set up my timer and also just like arrange my notes for a bit. Thank you. Okay, hi, I am the DLO of this debate. I'm sorry if my voice isn't that audible, as it's really it's raining really heavy here. Yeah. My preferred POI is just through unmuting your mic. Do not put your POI on chat because I won't be looking at chat at all. Though, do not POI me aggressively. If I rejected you, then it means that I don't accept your POI at all. Then, in that case, I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Notice on how OG never engaged in our stance, where we told you that we're going to be giving the importance to this to citizens and basically society whose country is really that messed up, aka the government not doing the responsibility. Then under your side, you're going to be only playing under your best case for the government is placed to be really that good. There's no engagement to our case whatsoever. Secondly, OG is very biased in this debate by over glorifying that government is already doing their job. No, they haven't. Okay, if Joe Biden is really that good of an example, then there won't be any complaint against Joe Biden. There's going to be just a media just going to publishing about how amazing Joe Biden is. Oh my God, he makes America into so much. He makes America into that good of a country. But no, it's the opposite of that. There's multiple complaints going against him of how he's making the USA is that bad. He's making about there's even the first the first month of his regime. Regime. There's already complaining about how the gas prices are is really high. That's how bad the US is. Hence, if they're just going to stick just about by Joe Biden is, then there's no voices for these people to actually find their justice and to have a betterment of life, which they deserve. But what happened under OG, because they don't have any of that. Then thirdly, what does OG what does OG mean when people are going to be like people are going to be unincluded under our side. When we told you that these changes are done because there's going to be riot of like asking for equality, which note that OG have never engaged out this at all and only play in the best case. Then moving on, we believe that under our side, a new radical movement of government of a new radical government approach will be better. Why? Firstly, regarding on how like we're going to be like putting back the burden to government up, right? Like when we're talking about like why we should put a new government in the country, it's because the government in that one country has failed to do its job. Let's take a look at how Thai people are doing kudeta here and there because to get their own right, and yet they were put into prison because there is such a rule stating of how like they cannot go against the king or even like criticize it. It's a picturization of how messed up Thailand government is. Like especially in cases like this, like there needs to be like a new government put. A country cannot last long if the government system of a country isn't doing what it's meant to do, which is like taking care of the citizen and the country, right? With this analysis, you can see that under government side, like they're going to be like neglecting their citizens. Like even if like government argues on how like they're doing like they're doing like this system to prevent chaos in their country because it takes a long time and like yada yada stuff like that, then like then notice that under this like cases of like the country is needed to change, then like under their side it won't be like having change at all, just to be staying in the like the corrupted and like messed up country that it already is. Like okay, secondly, like even if like governments argue on how like it's going to be very risky on our side, like we still think that is okay because this, we're going to take the bullet that is a 50-50 chance where the system is going to work because of because it's going to be justified because of like the country of the condition of a country is that messed up that we're just going to take the bullet that because like the very least there's going to be change, right? Even if that fails, it's okay because what we're asking is for the change, right? Then moving on, what government has brought up in this debate? Government talk about how nobody is ready. Like yes, this system is going to be bad when no one is ready, but the problem is we talk about how this is going to be like significantly better when a situation like when like a situation of a country is that bad, especially when we've given you example on how like especially in Thailand when like the people themselves are asking for justice, hence if there's like a new political movement that's going to be better, not just because for the welfare of people also for like the country's like for the country's future, right? Because if there's no change, then Thailand will just be like thing as it is, like there's no justice for these people at all, right? And then moving on, like when we're talking about like there's going to be like sudden change, then it's not like with this new politics there's going to be like a huge chance change is going to be like a complete 180. Even if we play under the propositions world when it's the political system is really that going to be that drastically different, right? It's okay. Like it's going to be that okay. Notice that this likelihood happening is like very low because like you won't be changing like the whole social culture that's been in the country. It's not going to be changed. It's not going to have a chance that's like change that's that drastically, right? The likelihood of that to even happen is like very low. Secondly, if proposition stance is change the system gradually, then there's no immediate change coming from their side. What happened if it's like sacramental to change the whole like government system, because it's important to find the solution in that because like this is basically like hanging on it's like basically hanging on like the people's life, because country's governmental system also it hugely impacts the citizens' life. Then under proposition, there's going to be no urgency at all to change the people life for the better. Then three reasons that I will think of. Even if like we play under proposition best case where this new politic is going to be that bad for people, we still think that it's okay, because if this new politic is going to be that bad, then there's going to be a riot in society, hence meaning that there's going to be a demand to change, which the likelihood of that to happen is like very, very low. Like like what I'm trying to say, like even if it's that bad, then it will not last long anyway. Secondly, in comparison under proposition phase, they're going to just stay in status quo and no change whatsoever. Even if political system is that bad, then the very least under our side, we're going to have a have to change the chance to change, especially when government hasn't done their responsibility. Third, why is status quo enough? Simple. The system of a country so status quo is not enough simple. The system of the country is in the midst of changing, hence important for a country to keep up with the checks. Hence, with this reasoning, I'm very proud to oppose.
Thank you, Deputy Leader of our fine speech. To open the case in closing bench, I would like to invite member of GAP. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, check. Am I audible?
Yep, you're clear.
All right. My preferred, hold on. My preferred POI is to unmute. Hold on, I'm gonna put my cam. Can you see me?
Yep, it's visible.
All right. Taking POIs by unmute. I won't be looking at the chat box. Oh yeah, my pronoun is she, her. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. One major flaw coming from OO is the feasibility of how this all run by having riots, possible murders, and the radicalism in and of itself. This isn't the worst case. This is the world that they need to defend, but realize how even by both speakers they keep running away. We say that the picture of the world in and of itself is already scary. So with that in and of itself, so proud to propose 2 framings. I just want to start off from the get-go. Firstly, if we want to become a leader that's liked by all, don't even become a president in the first place, bro. Go sell ice cream instead. Satisfaction is a zero-sum game because I think OG have explained to you beautifully that the government is centralized to making decisions based on the importance and needs. If you want a government that can satisfy all, abuse of power would likely more exist under your side of the house exactly because your movement is more radical. People can pressure the government more, and literally in and of itself, you are in the government because you are radical. That is how you win. So bias would just exist more under your side of the house, like how OG have stated to you. But then secondly, I just want to point out that both worlds wants to change. Both worlds have the same revolutionary kind of mindset and the spirit for that, right? But realize how the only difference in this debate is the movement and the approach to how you create that change. I just want to point that out because I think both of the openings kind of like make it like how we don't made it seem like the idea of this or the spirit of revolutionary isn't symmetric. But I just want to point out that it's symmetric, but it's more of the focus on how then the change is different and how can we create a better change. And therefore, I just want to prove why then radicalism is just not it. In my extension here, I'm just going to talk more about what OG haven't really talked about, right? OG talks a lot about the political wave, but CG here is here to talk about the government, solely on the government, and how the future sustainability of how the government system would run in the first place. So starting off, it is such a huge gamble because you have no choice but to, we say that if you want to make a new law and you want to implement it with no prior like history, for example, even if OO have talked to you about like, oh, we have it like set for years and years example, but like the implementation is different, right? So we say this is a huge gamble because you have no choice but to copy paste a running law from another country because we say you want to change this country to another subtype of ideology that comes from another country, right? So you want to have no choice but to copy and paste a running law from another country. And it's not necessarily a copy and paste, we get it, but you import their think tanks from their country and try to use that in your country. So you can see that soft power, so you can see to the soft power of another country in your country. So 2 points here. First of all, we question if that's the case, it's less likely for other countries to cooperate with you because first of all, you're new. What is there to develop country? What is there for the developed countries to help you? We say if you want to bring like, for example, a communist, which is like the worst case scenario, but here's an example, like a ideology A from a developed country B, because obviously if you want to implement a running law, you want to make sure that this law is already running from a developed country, right? But we say if you want to cooperate with that, it's very less likely for these other countries to cooperate you in the first place, because first of all, even if you're already a developed country and then you want to change the radicalism of this developed country, then it's all over from the start, right? It's from square one. These people don't want to work with you because you're literally resetting from square one. Then two, later on, if they do want to cooperate, they will have a bigger bargaining power against you, more leverage against you, right? So easily, OO's concern here is concerning, because if you truly side with them, because even after a civil war, your leverage power is still weaker, and even if there's like new technological and innovations, all the new shit that they tell you, that society wouldn't be able to afford that anyways. This brings down the whole OO's weight in their argument, right? You want to revolutionize, not to be oppressed anymore in the country, but realize that that is what you do here, right? You expand your oppression overseas, cross countries, right? This isn't the right momentum. This is a mismatched solution. The tipping point here is that we can assume that both societies are suffering. Realize that engaging to this worst case, both under government and opposition, we are still better here, because realize that their side taking at their best more worse. It's basically more worse, because where society won't be able to afford anything because of the weak leverage by their government could bargain, right? You're taking one step forward just to roll a step back 100 steps back. But to make this more crystal clear, I have two more scenarios, right, about how this will implement on the two actors that I feel like have been talking about a lot in this debate, which is firstly society and secondly government. But before that, I'll take your PR.
How do you prove that under both sides there's going to be like equal revolutionary change?
Yeah, there are equal revolutionary change. This motion wouldn't even exist in the first place if there's no equal revolutionary change. Okay, anyways, moving to these two scenarios. Firstly, in the society, about the future presidents here, right? That being violent, the future presidents in the society is that being violent is more feasible under their side of the house. So the future is that when people are being upset about the current political situation, they will jump to violent manners and to solve it instead of trying to talk about it nicely first, right? So the education about politics will do nothing but decrease over time. But realize that there's going to be a polarization of society, how one prefers the old one and how the other one prefers the new one. This will be a never-ending topic, and there will be more wars under your side of the house, exactly because both are trying to fight for the throne of the government, right? But then secondly, on the government side, any radical attempt in a stable government, we can say that that's wrong and radicalism is bad, right? But under this motion, you can't say radical is bad, because the reason why you're sitting in the parliament or in the government body is because you are part of radicalism and you're revolutionized, right? So the weighing on crimes and legal justice system will also flaw and more unstable under opposition side of the house, because you cannot use your morality as because harming others is something that you justify. The solution then that we want under CG is that if you truly want to change the legal justice system, for example, you need to be inside the legal justice system. If you want to change the political wave, you need to learn about politics, learn how to criticize correctly, how to debate correctly, have a well-known stance in society, have something to say, join a party and change it from them. If you can't beat them, join them and prove them wrong, right? Bringing this whole argument about how they think that there's more incentive for society to educate themselves, we don't think people want to be seen as something as radical as good, because if anything, your image is tainted, because being radical means that you're harming others and morally, right? And morally, that's just messed up. Exactly because you're radical, it's so easy to be twisted by the media, like how OG has said, this doesn't represent change, this represents riot. Opposition does not bring any solution to the table. It's basically huge mismatch. It will just cause much more murders, much more harms. And exactly when you're taking into like an example of Indonesia, in which we have a lot of different interests from every different region, every different culture, every different religion, realize how it will just make such huge civil wars in the country just to fight for the throne. We say that's such a dangerous and such a scary kind of like atmosphere or environment to live in. So proud to propose vote for CG.
Thank you, Member of Government, for that fine speech, and party member of PR here.
Hi, everyone.
Yep, you are clear.
Okay, thank you. For POI, please unmute yourself one time, and I'll try to accept one before 6. Gender pronoun he or her. I'm going to start my speech. In 3, 2, 1. 3 things before jumping to my case. First, cases that were brought by opening opposition are solvable even even not even without radicalization, which is why CG can come and easily say that, oh, we can negotiate, we can say that actually this is wrong and probably we have to fix it. I'm going to prove to you why it's not that easy. But secondly, just because OO failed to characterize what happened in status quo as to why we need radicalization, doesn't mean that both government side of the house have the ability to say that previously these countries who have radicalizations are moderate countries. Because exactly in status quo, usually countries who conducted this radicalization, they have like unique or even ridiculously dumb political system, which is why we have to change it. But third of all, talking about majority, right? It's funny that you say that it's only majority based, but at the same time, you take the example of democracy, which is exactly majoritarian cases. So majorities cases is not solvable here. Even in our side of the house, I'm going to prove to you later how then people are going to listen to minority even more in our side of the house. With that being said, two things in our side of the house. First, why is it justifiable to do this kind of radicalization, and what are the benefits? Justification points. Three things here. First, it's simply justifiable because it has been proven to save the life of many people, right? China in the past were not livable, Ms. Ramadan Chair. People dying on the ground because they cannot produce food, simply because they live scattered all around the country. They have to produce food individually. By the time radicalization exists, it creates better production level to make it mass produced and being able to be assessed by the society. Also, radicalizations in Somaliland literally save the life of people that are dying on the ground due to the civil war in the vacuum of power by the time military coup exists. That's why these radicalizations or a government topple down the other government and being able to create new changes in the society has proven to create a betterment which is save life of people, right? Not that this justification proves to you that whether or not it is sudden or not, it doesn't matter by the time it's literally saving people's life. The right of democracy doesn't exist if they don't being a living creature, right? But second of all, I think the previous system of the political that were defended by both government side of the house were actually created in the very arbitrarily history, right? The reason why the Central Asian country like Azerbaijan and Armenia currently is still unstable because the political system were given by the war enthusiast Russia, USSR in the past, right? It also happened to Chile, Mr. Madam Chair. The reason why in the past they were communists is because of a bloody war that is done by Chef Guevara above thousands of corpses and dead body towards that kind of country. That's why in order to change this kind of arbitrary system, arbitrarily given political system to be more preferable towards the size of society, we need radicalization at the end of the day. But third of all, I think radicalization it is simply healthy to be adaptive in terms of political system, right? Argentina currently is suffering due to monetary crisis just because they never change their political system and economic system. They're always close. In the past, they used to be very, very rich, but simply because they refuse to accept any people, accept free trade whatsoever, currently their inflation is going to be very, very high and people are suffering on the ground. Note that this kind of things has to be analyzed by technocrats, by economists. So it doesn't necessarily that many people have to agree on it, but just because they simply don't have capacity to be agree on it. But radicalization makes this able to be done by the time one person have this idea that actually it creates to bring it's going to bring changes and it's going to bring the betterment of society and it's going to trigger better ability for them to do radicalization in the future, which is why it is principally justifiable. But second, the most important, why it has to be radical, because OO failed to prove this. Three reasons here. First, to make clear distinctions, right? In order to attract people, in order to make people understand our policy, we have to make clear distinctions from the past political system existing so that we are going to cater more and more mass in our set of the house. But second of all, because somewhere in the middle, just like what government tried to bring in this debate, simply doesn't work. It happens to most countries like Spain, like Indonesia. In Spain, they have this one radical movement named Catalonian. It has been for far too long them being seen as the separatist movement and don't want to, be inside the Spanish authoritarianism, right? inside the Spanish government, right? But what Spanish government do is simply saying that, we can coexist one another, we can just try to live one another. What happened right now, the country is unstable because the radical movement is still there, and they just don't have their rights being granted, their voice being heard at the end of the day. Also happened to Indonesia, as to what Papua exists and Aceh exists in their side of the house, right? But why is it good in our side of the house? We are more stable because we are more clear. Our society already understand what's the type of this country and how does it look like. But second of all, there is more ability for this minority to voice out themselves simply because they have the justification to become an opposition. They are not seen as the separatist movement, but instead they're just simply the opposition of the other political view, right? Simply because the current political view is just simply radical, and therefore it is very common for you to have like other political view that is rising and emerging. But due to this radicalization, it's also possible for them to rise up and try to combat and topple down the government in the future by the time they think that the current government doesn't work anymore. But first of all, we are creating better evaluation in our side of the house. Radicalization is a huge thing. It involves a lot of people. It gathers attentions, and it's becoming the center, cases of the world. People pay attention towards them simply because it's something that is, unique and something that is very big, right? Therefore, evaluation coming from opposition party exists in our side of the house simply because we understand that this is very radical, and we have to do a lot of check and balance to make sure that nobody is getting hurt under this kind of system. But in the worst case scenario that we don't succeed to radicalize the country, it's even better in our side of the house to do moderate scenario as what government proposed to you, right? Because by the time you give radical approach and the country refuse it, they are going to think how to cater to our voice. This is exactly what happened in Arab Spring, Mr. Amalat Chair. Arab is currently more lenient because of Arab Spring, because they don't want to be governed and being toppled down and being replaced by the democracy. Therefore, they try to listen towards the voice of this kind of radical movement and exactly being more moderate in our side of the house. Very proud to oppose.
Thank you, member of opposition, for the final speech. I'd like to invite Gabriel Boric.
Hi, am I audible and visible?
Can you come again?
That's what she said. Am I audible and visible?
Yep, you are about now.
Yeah. You like to chat? Right. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think the biggest flaws in all of the teams is that they cage themselves in a very specific scenario in order for their case to run. That is to say that all of the teams like really dependent on the specific scenarios, such as, for example, opposition team really so much rely on that the government currently is bad, and opening government rely so much on that. Oh, right now we have moderate government where we have transactionalism in politics and so on and so forth. We said in CG we detach ourselves from that reliance. And what we focus on in CG's case is that the implementation of the attempt of creating radical government, and the implementation of the radical government in and of itself is inherently bad for the societies and for the country in and of itself. And that's the first biggest flaw coming from all of the teams, and why CG goes above them. The second flaw is that they never actually, if you actually take notice, they never actually characterize what does this radical government actually wants, right? So I think to some point, I think oppositions kind of characterize this, but never crystallize upon the specific sentence of what radical government actually wants. We think like radical governments, their ultimate goal is to be free from past oppression. This looks like in Thailand, for example, they just want to be free from the oppression from their past monarchy and so on and so forth. So all they want to do is envision a new life where chains are not handcuffed in their wrists. But what you're gonna do in opposition is to bring them a bigger chain, and this is what we have, and we'll prove in opposing government. So I'm just going to I'm just not going to like technically explicitly rebut to opposition case. I'm just going to sum up CG's case, but I'm going to highlight as to why this particular case actually trampled down all of the case coming from all of the things. Right. So let's talk about how this radical government happens to achieve their goal. Right. And this is a priori to opposition's case to run. So either you force it through physical manner, like for example, like what happened in Thailand. In this is like the most likely case, because that's the most likely the way you succeed, right? Because like these like government that you want to topple down, the political the system that you want to like really change, already have the monopoly on the power. So you force it through physical manner, for example, like coup d'etat. But in the process of that, in after of that, you exhaust an overwhelming budget coming from your political parties or your radical group. The second thing is that you do it politically, like Netanyahu did, which is an anomaly in of itself because we don't think it's less likely to enforce because it's very hard to convince the majority who is accustomed to the current principle. And I think OG rightfully pointed this out. But let's say it's feasible, we're still saying this leads to some bad impact, right? So the question then, given this particular situation as to how the process radical government runs, why this is going to be bad in the end of the day? Because in the scenario where you actually did establish the new radical government, you are more likely to be unstable, right? Because you will have less money once you revolutionize, for example. But the second thing is that you're struggling to implement the new reform. Because number one, you have to make sure that the moment that you run the government, the people actually obey your law, which is less likely because of the polarization of society that you created once you revolutionize, because some people are still accustomed to the old order. This is what happened with Sparta, for example, and things like that, which is important because this is how you ensure the stability of a government. But secondly, this is how you ensure the criminal rate, the criminal rates stay low, because the criminal rates only like align with how much you trust the government to actually run the legal system. And this is conjunction to like opposition case, because in order for them to actually not really like discriminate minority, for example, is that they have to be afraid of like the current legal system and they have to be afraid of the current government. And we don't think this is going to be likely to happen when they are actually still are believing in the current past system and whatsoever. So you have to make sure that people obey your law first. I think closing opposition, even though they're going to be very late in answering this, is have to actually ensure us as to why they're going to obey the law in of itself. But more importantly, is that your radical government, and by definition, is that you're actually implementing something that has never been done before. I don't care whether opposition say that, oh, we have been already like implementing this for years whatsoever. I think like like thinking about this for years and whatsoever, they already planned this and whatsoever. Planning about this is different than implementing it, because like you may have like the ideal things in mind, but given that you already exhaust your budget, for example, you need to do like certain adjustment to what you actually want to implement. So you most likely, so given that you never actually implement the changes, that you never actually know how to actually run the particular bills in order for your radical system, for your like societal change and like political changes to run, you most likely going to import think tank from another country with more experience in that particular ideology. And this is what CG has already pointed out. Because you cannot just copy paste like the bills from like literally like text by text, right? Because you have to adjust it to the context of your society. But the process of that importing the think tank from another country is going to be very less likely to be feasible. Because number one, we question where is the money for you to import this kind of particular think tank. But the second thing is that your like this idea of importing think tank and the idea of that you have to adjust the economy by extension is that you have to establish a stable relationship with other countries. And this is also what CG highlights, right? And never been highlighted by opening government in regards to international relation. So when you try to establish the relationship with another country, we questions whether the relationship will going to be fair. because you are actually are in an unstable condition because you just revolutionize yourself. So most likely the other party, the other part of the country of the relationship will going to have a higher leverage power. So most likely like you cannot like really have a high leverage to actually, for example, bargain, like for example cheap goods or like cheap think tanks whatsoever. And this is also engaged to CO saying that, oh, at least like we're open to new market whatsoever. We question whether this is likely to be more cheaper and more likely to be more expensive than. And this is why, for example, you're going to be oppressed not by your current government, but by another country. You bring a bigger oppression to your people. We don't want this as a revolutionized government. Very proud to propose.
Thank you, Governor Wee, for that fine speech. Now inviting opposition with here.
Check, am I audible?
You are clear.
My POI preference is through the chat. Maybe I will take before or around 5 minutes until 6 minutes. I don't have specific gender pronouns. And starting my wait. Wait, let's set up my timer first. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 10. 3, 2, 1. It's kind of sad when whole of government bands are assuming that opposition bands playing in the case when the government is bad, but at the same time, especially CG admit that this radical movement is free, that they want free from the previous arbitrary government, like what happened in Thailand. Prove how this new radical movement government exists in the certain country that previous government are arbitrary or bad government to begin with, right? Because what the transition is this is not only about the violence in our side. We can use the mass provoke, for example, that most likely happen in China. There, that exactly those kind of the violence are exist in the previous government. There will be war like what happened in the Thailand civil war or something like that. But even if we are use violence, we still need the consent from the society who following this because this for the betterment of the future our country to begin with, right? My speech are simple. I will directly debunk all of the argument from the entire government bench, right? Going to the opening government first is first of all the case of them is talking about on how society is not ready for that. It's also happened in the closing government when they are talking about society will not accept your policy, for example, or something like that. Two reasons. First of all, society always ready whenever the new incumbent government lead. Because why? Because government always change in every era. In the moderate country, like democratic country, for example, will always choose a new president in every election, for example. But also in the kingdom country, will change era also when the previous king or queen are all die, for example. Therefore, there will be more. There will be new incumbent government inside those country, right? But look, even if yes, they are not that that easy for ready for this new government, I think it's okay because it's something normal for you to adapt first with those kind of the incumbent government to begin with, right? With the analogy where the government create a new regulation, for example, society doesn't accept it, but slowly but sure they can adopt with those regulations day by day, just because they are already adapt with those kind of the things to begin with, right? It is also the case what the closing government want. The moment those kind of the people are not okay with those kind of the regulation that created by this government, you as the in our world, those kind of government can always educate their society about what is the regulation is, for example, what the purpose and what the benefit on that. That at the end of the day, slowly but sure, that those kind of things are also will going to be adapt. Like what happened those also in their side of the house, right? Therefore, I don't think it's the case, right? But the second of all is talking about the minority protection is the thing. First, we never sure which political system that will be lead this country later. But the second, with the new system that will change, that exactly it can change for you as the minority to speak up at the end of the day. Minority like the feminist or the queer community can use this momentum to glamorize themselves, so, doing the social media campaign, or you are supporting this new incumbent government. This government are most likely to be hurt you at the end of the day. First, because understanding you want to change the system, what this politician need are support as much as possible, not only from the majority but also the minority. Also, there will be accept minority voice anywhere, right? But the second, they want the system that will be settled for the long term at the end of the day. Therefore, they will be create more policy that as good as possible for the whole layer of the society at the end of the day. But even if in the worst case scenario that we are not accepted, therefore VO case are important. That those kind of the people, also, those kind of the minority also can doing the radicalize at the end of the day. Like what happened this current incumbent government that did to begin with, right? But let's compare what with the entire government world. There are still rely with the status quo that exactly don't have the progress at all. At the end of the day, we already told you that those kind of the previous government also is the even like the democratic country that also the majority vote. Those kind of the minority will lose anyway at the end of the day without any kind of progress at the end of the day under government bans. I don't think that they win this case to begin with, right? But okay, let's move to the closing government. They are talk on how those kind of the it's bad because at the end of the day you are not ready as the government. You only copy paste from the another country, for example. Therefore, there will be weak government in the beginning to begin with, right? But first of all, I agree with the opening opposition when they're talking about on how this government already prepare anything before they are lead these countries to begin with, right? But the second of all, we gotta how you gotta make sure that there will be weak government because they are still new and we cannot see what will be happen in the future. But let us engage this case to begin with, right? That the moment you are only copy paste from the other countries, for example, why is okay in our side of the house? Because I think it was something that really normal for the country to copy another countries to begin with, right? Like on how Indonesia always trying to copy another regulation from another countries, like in terms of education, copying from the Finland, for example. Or like in Taiwan, for example, when those kind of the democratic are always copying from the US to begin with. Therefore, I think it's quietly something normal for those kind of country to copy paste what the another countries did to begin with, right? As long as that those kind of the copy paste, they are already filtering with that only filter those kind of the good policy, for example, or even like the good ideology to begin with. I think it's okay, right? But talking about on how at the end of the day is those kind of the countries like will going to be less money, for example, and so on and so forth. I don't think it's the case because the country like Switzerland, for example, that already rich country is impossible to doing this radicalization. This country is most likely are already bad, for example. Therefore, it's possibility is also possible happen under their side of the house. But the second of all, those kind of things like on how I think the help from the other countries will going to be massive happen in our side of the house. As a simple on how they are know that you are the new current government that already topple down the arbitrary government. Therefore, international will notice that you are as the struggle government. That therefore it's possible for you to get more help at the end of the day, proudly to oppose.
Thank you, opposition leader, for that fine speech that marked